What's up, YouTube? This is Too Raw for TV. Alright, so I want to thank Shaw for this graphic. Guys, subscribe to me. He's real popular on Facebook. And he's really good at debunking the nonsense of Lediclics. But he also, from time to time, talks about other things. Now, I know this might be a little bit of a sensitive area, because I love Bill Russell. I do think he's one of the great players in the history of the NBA, but I do think sometimes he's a bit overrated. And when I say overrated, that does not mean that he sucks. It does not mean that I think that he isn't good. I think people forget what that word means. It just means that sometimes he's a bit overvalued. All right? He was great, but he's overvalued when you look at the contributions of the all-time creme de la creme players produced for their teams. All right? Look, he and Wilt Chamberlain played in the NBA together for 9 years, for actually about 10 years. 10 years, really. Because Wilt came in at 59, left in 60, and Bill Russell left in 69. So let's say 9 to 10 years, but it's about 9 to 10 years. And during those 10 years, 9 to 10 years, there's no question. Now, I know it's a little bit small on the screen, but there's no question who was the more valuable player of these guys, man. I mean, it's honestly really not close, man. 1959-1960, Bill Russell averaged 18.2 points, 24 rebounds, 3.7 assists on 46.7% shooting from the floor. That's one of his best shooting years. That might be his best shooting year altogether. Wilt Chamberlain averaged 37.6 points, 27 rebounds, 2.3 assists, 46.1% shooting. So, when you look at the fact that Wilt had to shoot the ball as much as he did, and his field goal percentage is right on par with Bill Russell, despite the fact that at that time Bill Russell had on his team Bob Cousy, Bill Sharman, and Tom Heinsohn, who were all really good to great scorers. I mean, that's another thing. Shaw put up a good point. From 1959 to 1968, in every All-Star game, there was at least 3 Celtics in each All-Star game. Think about that. And it wasn't necessarily a popularity contest back then. It was legitimately the best players. So for 9 years in a row, for Eastern representation, there was at least 3 Celtics on the team. I mean, the Celtics really had a big advantage when it came to talent, man. So let's keep forward. Let's keep going with this. All right. So the second year, 16.9 points, 23.9 rebounds, 3.5 assists. Wilt, 38.4 points, 27.2 rebounds, 1.9 assists, 50.9% shooting. Wilt was the first player in NBA history to shoot 50% from the floor. And I don't know if I have to keep going through all these different years, but let's just go to their last season together. 68-69, 9.9 rebounds. Bill Russell, 9.9 points, 19.3 rebounds, 4.9 assists, 43.3% shooting. Wilt, 20.5 points, 21.1 rebounds, 4.5 assists, 58.3% shooting. Now, this is a Wilt Chamberlain that by this time was being asked to play a Bill Russell role. And he was out Russell. He still scored more points. He still grabbed more rebounds. He averaged just as much assists. And he was far more efficient. I mean, far more efficient than Bill Russell. Now, I know it's not all about numbers. Yes, it can be other things, right? But you can't talk about blocks, right? Because blocks weren't counted. And even those who did count blocks unofficially, right, said, like Harvey Pollack, who was the statistician for the Philadelphia 76ers for like 53 years or something, even he had Wilt Chamberlain out blocking Russell. Right? So, with every metric of the game, Wilt was better than Bill Russell. The difference was that Bill Russell knew his limitations. Wilt felt like he didn't have any limitations. And I would say this. The only difference I would see in the two is this. As I was saying, Wilt really could do it all out there. Wilt didn't have to rely on teammates, right, until he got older. So you could make the argument that maybe he didn't trust his teammates enough for a long period of time. But then again, you can't say that because by the year that he really had help, 1966-67, he wins a championship. Then when he goes to the Lakers, even when he's past his prime, he wins a championship and appears in the finals in 1969, 70, 72, and 73. Unfortunately, age began to catch up with him and his teammates. The problem was that for much of his prime, Wilt and Norman Chamberlain didn't have a Bob Cousy. He didn't have a Tom Heinsohn. He didn't have a John Havlicek. He didn't have a Bill Sharman. He didn't have these guys on his team. Bill Russell did, and that was the difference. But by every metric, scoring, rebounding, defense, it was close. You might give the edge to Russell for versatility, but Chamberlain was right there. Playmaking, it was close. I would say Russell was a more willing passer. Shot blocking, Wilt, even though Bill Russell is one of the greatest shot blockers of all time. Athleticism, Bill Russell was phenomenal, but Wilt Chamberlain was on an otherworldly level. I mean, I just don't understand, man. I don't get it for the life of me. And even with all of that help, in the postseason, if I'm not mistaken, I think the stat was in 7 games or 7 games, the Celtics beat Wilt's team by a total of like 11 points in 6 or 7 games. So even with all of that help, it still took some nobody or one of the unsung other players to make a shot to bail out Russell when Wilt didn't have that luxury on his team. I mean, for many years, the best guy on his team at the point was Guy Rodgers, which no disrespect to him, but Guy Rodgers was a pass-first point guard. He wasn't a great scorer. He couldn't really score like that. Then when he first got there, you had guys like Tom Gola and Paul Arizin, who, I mean, God bless them, they were really good players in the 1950s, but with the speed of the 60s, because the game really changed in the 60s, they really couldn't do the things they did in the 50s. Plus, they were older. So, Wilt didn't have the teammates that Bill Russell had. I'm sorry, he just didn't. And I'm going to put it to you like this. And LeBron fans should understand where I'm coming from. Because there was a stretch where LeBron James was the most dominant player in those finals in 2015, 2016, and 2017, and 2018, right? But what was the difference in most of those finals? The Warriors were deeper and had more talent. And that was the story of Wilt Chamberlain's life for much of his prime. He was the best player on the court, but he just didn't have enough help around him. And those who watched him play knew that. And that's why in his lifetime, he was called the GOAT. That's why even a little bit after his death, when people still around that watched him play, had him as recently as 2003 in Slam Magazine competing with Jordan for the GOAT. It's only after all those people that watched him play that have passed on. Now you have this stupid narrative that he played against 6'4" white midgets. I shouldn't have said that term, but you know what I meant. He played against 6'4" little people, white little people. Blah blah blah, yakety schmackety. That's when you start seeing these stupid, insane narratives start, and that's why you now have people even having the audacity to put Wilt out of their top 25, right? But it's funny. These people will say LeBron is the GOAT, but LeBron's done nothing but play with superstars, right? And when LeBron has lost, what did they always say? He dragged a bunch of bums to the finals. Well, look who Wilt Chamberlain's playing with for many years, right? Until he went to Philly. Well, the Warriors were just more talented. Oh, so that's an excuse for LeBron, but not Wilt and Bill Russell, who had 12 Hall of Famers that he played with altogether. So, just wanted to put that out there. Tell me what you guys think.